Anna, thank you for joining me today. I want to start off with your background as a Holocaust survivor. Where were you and your mother liberated, and what was the date?
Yeah, we were liberated in Parschnitz. It is a camp that belonged to Rose Garden. I will not repeat this now because I wanted to give you the name very carefully. But it was a relatively small camp and in the Czech Republic.
So I struck by the recent events in our country, and the day before President Biden was inaugurated, he held this very moving memorial for the COVID victims at the Lincoln Memorial. And there was something that he said that I think is so pertinent to January 27th, an International Holocaust Remembrance Day. He said, quote, it's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal, end of quote.
Exactly.
And you and your mother were the only members of your family to survive the Holocaust. And as a survivor, and also as a psychiatrist, would you agree with that? And in your experience, can you give us some insights?
Actually, I did not know way ahead that this will be a very important statement because I use that idea that we have to remember the losses before we can begin to heal. This has been on my mind throughout, and I had used it in other presentations. And I was very happy when I heard President Biden to say that because I had to agree with him 100%. I felt that there will be no healing unless we remember. And this is something that is difficult to do when you are beginning to feel maybe the future will be better and so forth. I want to tell you something tell you about my extremely strong and enduring response to the night before the inauguration when Biden and his wife and Kamala and her husband had come to the big pool and had that memorial service. I was looking forward to that because more than anything, I wanted to experience the memories and feeling. I did not realize how profound my reaction would be. I had a very strong reaction to that memorial service. I cried a great deal. I experienced sadness, the sense of loss in a way that I had not experienced for a long, long time. I was in touch with all three of my children, a great deal of tears, memories. For some reason, I knew that whatever happens at that event and the way that they will do the memorialization. I don't know if you were there that night. It was extraordinary.
Moving, yes.
Extraordinary. It started for me around 4:00, and it was, I knew for something had to happen in this period of the day or evening at sunset. And it was extremely well timed. I had no idea what will follow. I only knew that this part of the celebration, in a way, was the most important one for me. So I started watching the television around 4:30, and then you could see the change from late afternoon or late afternoon, and it was getting darker and darker. And I was wondering, what are they waiting for? It will be dark very soon, not knowing that that was the point. This change from in the afternoon, late afternoon, to that late beginning of the night. It's hard to tell.
Mm.
I felt, and then I had no idea. I had no idea what they were waiting for. And that those lights.
Watching the light change, the natural light going to to dusk, sundown, and there was something very spiritual about that, very bonding for us, I think, visually. And then when the lamps were lit, that spoke volumes to me. In fact,
Volumes.
you know,
Just as you put it.
you know.
Just as you put
But
it.
there's something about natural light and how it changes, it shifts, and you know, while I was watching this, it made me think of you know, for me, I don't want to say favorite, but an important part of Yom Kippur is
Mm.
Nehila, the conclusion. And to me, not only that final sounding of the shofar, but the idea that the light changes and we're coming down to sundown, and it's a marker. It's a marker of a joint journey as well as the individual journey. And I felt this with that memorial. Very few words were said, but the words were
Ah,
profoundly felt.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm.
The Bidens said a few things, and then they turned uh, toward the body of water,
Yeah. The sacred pool.
and the light, yes.
Mm.
And I cannot tell you, I was so overcome. It took me hours falling asleep. Actually, I could not
Mm.
until I spoke to all three of my children. And so I could cry. They knew that I rarely ever burdened them with my grief. They knew this was an experience that I have not had for years. That superimposition of the loss of these 100,000 people who died because of the virus, all the losses that people had suffered in all these terrible wars. And I, indeed, like all, very selfish in some way.
Mm.
My own grief had become overwhelming to me.
Did you find
The
that
rate,
grief?
yes.
I'm sorry. Did you find in grieving, and then of course you said you shared with your children the bond,
Yeah, I mean,
that part of the
because
healing?
I felt I needed that to come back to
No.
some, but I could not. And they were just listening to me.
Mm.
They just, no, Mom, sure. I said to Miriam, Can you think? Can you even for a minute consider that you would lose your only child? No. That would be unbearable. Yes.
Mm.
I think those of us who remain from that carnage will never forget what is it like. Can you join me in, even for a second, consider that every member of your family is gone? Your mother is there, yes, the only one.
Mm. Do you remember that day you were liberated with your mother? Do you still?
No, you know, we didn't have a very nice liberation. It was the very end of the war. It was May 8th, if
Mm.
you want to put down the day. And that point, the Germans were already putting down, and we didn't know that, by the way. We were not called out to work. That was very different from everything else. And I must have written that to you, or it's in my little story about liberation. But we in Parshnitz, in that camp, we had no idea that that was the end of the war. We did not know that. We were not called to, we didn't hear the, the wake up call.
Mm.
And when I woke up that morning, the sun was up. Most amazing, because whenever we were awakened, uh, it was always dark. We had to start the day.
Mm.
I had to go to the bathroom and get that terrible piece of disgusting so-called soup and go to work. But this time, uh, it was light outside. And our cot, where my mother and I slept, our cot was next door, next to the window, the window that goes from the floor to the ceiling, because where we were housed was a place for a factory. It was a factory work. So this is the kind of light that they had. So it was a very big window, and only one piece, nothing. In other words, when I made a big noise, not a little one, because when I went to the window and realized there was a German with a horse, and he was about to get onto the horse, I gave out a huge scream, not realizing that woke up these 2,000 or I don't know how many people in that room. And they all wanted to come to the window. What is it I sold? By the time they got there, there was a danger that that window, because we were on the second floor, would break and I would going down, as because the masses were pushing me
Mm.
toward the window. So I was smart enough. How did I manage that? I immediately went down to the floor and tried to find my way between the legs of these women who were trying to get into the window and look out to find my mother. And then we realized this is the end of the war, or something certainly happened that made the Germans leave. And now we were then for the whole day without anybody. The Germans left, but nobody showed up. It was dusk.
Mm.
that day that we then saw one single Russian soldier. I must have told you about that. It was a Jew. Apparently, they did it on purpose so that this Jew could speak Yiddish to the group. He got up on a table and told us, as well as I could understand, that they are here, the Russian troops are here, and that they had seen this sight all day long. You see, Gross Rosen, now I can tell you, Gross Rosen, and you will find it on your map.
Mm.
Gross Rosen was the center of these groups of um concentration camps. So we belong to Gross Rosen. I did not know that until later. There were many of these camps, and most of them, like the one that I worked in, there's ammunition camp factories, and we were brought there every morning to uh, take care of the work that we had to do. Now, maybe I'm talking too long here, no? No. Anyway, that day was very different. So we spent the whole day hoping for somebody to show up. And I may have told you that because of the hunger and the what began immediately, the ransacking of the pantry. And here is my mother, who's because I very very hungry, and then I realized that the pantry was open and people were rushing in, and there was the flour and the sugar and the whatever there was. All I heard was my mother screaming at me, "Don't touch it, don't touch it." Many people died because immediately took the sugar and their bodies totally dehydrated, couldn't tolerate the impact of that. This is how my mother survived. She helped me survive in all kind of ways.
Your mother
But
is your mother is this extraordinary figure, and in fact, your memoir, My Mother's Eyes, which is really one of my cherished books, right, in my library, not only in terms of Holocaust books, but there are so many touching stories in the journey of survival that you and your mother went through and that you share in My Mother's Eyes. And I think all these years now, since your liberation, you went on to become educated and have a distinguished career as a child psychiatrist. And to me, one of the great Holocaust educators. I mean, I feel privileged that I've done so many programs with you over the years. But
yes,
I would ask you on January 27th, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I find there's so many lessons in My Mother's Eyes that you share. And in fact, anytime talking to you, I feel like I'm sitting and drawing from the well of great wisdom. All right. No, absolutely. Okay. And I know that there are thousands of people that would join me in saying that because you've touched so many people, especially as a Holocaust educator. And
I will be
about
doing
speaking,
it twice this week.
well, yeah, which is great. All right, mitzvah
I'm very
for you.
happy
All right,
about it.
but
Yes,
speaking to future generations.
tonight, to this afternoon, I will be. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
But speaking of future generations or people watching this, and on this day that is memorializing the millions of victims, and also a liberation of a death camp. So we have, in a sense, memory, liberation, healing. Is there or are there lessons that you'd want to, in the few minutes we have, to share as you've gone through this journey? Because you have memory and you have healing what you're going through, and I am so touched by what you spoke about earlier, watching the memorial for the COVID victims and how you were touched and how it resonated with you, and so your experiences, what you can give that will resonate with us and future generations.
You know, it will be nothing new. What I want to say, only to repeat what President Biden had said, the importance of remembering and to know there is no healing, there is no beginning of a new way of living unless at first we remember. If we are not willing to go there, namely to the painful memories, to re-experience the meaning that these losses had for you, you will not heal. No, because you have to remember in order to heal. And this is really something that is difficult because you don't want to sound very like, okay, let's remember. This kind of remembering is very painful.
Mm.
It really makes you think, who were these people to you? The fathers, when they mentioned about the victims of the COVID virus, who were they? Not just the victims of this disease. They were fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, and children too fell victim to this virus. And this is what you want to know at the very bottom of your heart and feel it. I could not recover till I fell asleep that night. I could not. At first, I spoke to Miriam, then Raphael, but I couldn't fall asleep until I spoke to Sharon too.
So there is also, with memory, is connection, that we need to connect to heal, and empathy.
No, that is underlines that, empathy underlines that this is the very bottom when you can feel that way and know that is because you survived, you are facing the task of telling others of the importance of remembering.
Oh, may their memory be a blessing.
Yes,
And you're a blessing.
exactly,
You're a blessing.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. But you're a blessing too.
Oh, God, I don't know, maybe, but I know I cannot tell you that memorial service as I lit, because the lighting of those candles was kind of a surprise. I had no idea that is what's going to happen here. And the very fact that these two couples faced that body of water, I was trying to remember talking with the children I don't know whether you would know about this custom when people come to visit the people, when the people come to for a yeshiva visit. Outside the door is a pitcher of water,
Mhm.
and a little cup.
Mhm.
And everybody before entering the house to visit has to wash their hand. I wish, and I am going to find somebody who would tell me, what does that symbolize? As I remember in my own mind, I always thought there was something about water cleansing. Water cleanses. Was that water put in there for people to wash their hands before they enter the house in which the people said Shiva?
Mhm.
Maybe you can ask a scholar or some. I have no idea. But I remember very clearly that that was a custom. There was there was water in a pitcher and a cup, and people were supposed to wash their hands before they entered the house in which people were sitting Shiva. I don't know about the meeting. But when these two couples turned toward that body of water, that is the memory that came to me. I said the water is very important here, and I wish I knew. I would say to you now that water signifies life. There is no life possible when you our own thirst as we are arriving in Auschwitz is I am now preparing to talk about the Sudanese children who were walking in Africa. What did they suffer most from? Thirst. That is all we felt in the wagons as we were approaching Auschwitz. Thirst is unbearable, and we now know that you need water more than food in order to live. When they were turning toward the body of water, you have to remember there is no life without water.
It's symbolic on many levels. Well, I want to thank you for
So, yeah,
sharing your insights and opening your heart up to us. It means
by all means,
and
it is
you
something
are
that
so
provides
inspiring.
me
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Thank you.
I appreciate, very much appreciate you listening to this. Thank you. I couldn't tell it to everybody.
Well,
I know that I
I'll
have to
always
have somebody like you to
I'll always listen to
listen to
you,
that.
but I have to say, if there was any silver lining in this period,
Yeah.
we get to talk, we get to schmooze a few
Mhm.
times a week. It's
Wonderful.
not the same as
Wonderful.
being in the same room with you, but to do this with frequency,
Great.
you
Great.
know, yeah,
Thank you.
right. That's a good way to end the conversation
Yes.
with a kiss.
Mhm.